It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we're starting at the 56th World Economic Forum, which wound down in Davos, Switzerland on Friday after a week of global conversations. On the sidelines of it, Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima told Arise News that the country's sovereign future would be solidified by investing in its youth. His comments came in the wake of remarks that he delivered at an event hosted by Ghanaian President John Mahama titled Accra Reset, defining the sovereign future.
With a median age of 18, Nigeria is not just a nation. We are the workforce of the future. 242 million people as of last week, anticipated to be the third most populous nation on earth by 2050, and to be the most populous nation on earth by the end of the century. So I believe that Nigeria as a nation holds promise for the black race, because the trajectory of global growth is facing Africa, and Nigeria will make or mar that destination. 1 out of every 4 Africans is a Nigerian. And I believe that in the fullness of time, even the much-feared youth bulge, we are going to transform them into demographic dividends instead of the demographic disaster that people feared will consume all of us, because our young are digital natives, very versatile with the computer, with the new system, with AI, and the government is poised to put them at the center of our attention. Our economy, we have repositioned our economy. I do not want to run down previous administrations. I was part of it. Governance is about continuity. But when we assumed the mantle of leadership, our foreign reserves was less than $1 billion. Now it's inching towards $50 billion. We have taken some very bold decisions. The Minister of Finance is right here with me. Very bold, transformative decisions, like the removal of the fuel subsidy. We had the fuel subsidy cabal in Nigeria. You remember what former Governor Issa Yuguda said when one of his friends complained of making money, or he was tired of making money. And we know the consequences of unveiling a masquerade. It can even cost you your life. They are tremendously rich. They are even wealthier than the state. But the president from day one took the bullet by withdrawing fuel subsidy, eliminated arbitrage by collapsing the multiple exchange rate regimes, which was very opaque. And last week, the Nigerian Stock Exchange crossed the Rubicon of $100 trillion or trillion naira mark in capitalization. So there's great hope for the Nigerian nation, and hope springs eternal from the hearts of men. I'm very confident, I'm very hopeful, I'm a merchant of hope that Nigeria will lead the rest of Africa to greatness.
Nigeria House at Davos. It's been a very interesting week looking at what Nigeria has been presenting forward to the world. As usual, Nigeria usually comes very heavy to these international events. I'm not entirely sure that we have seen really the dividends of our new positioning on the world stage, or our attempt to reposition ourselves on the world stage. Now, Vice President Shettima did say some important things. 1 in 4 black people in the world are Nigerian. We have a huge population, and we have a huge youth population. But I think we need to go beyond a lot of these numbers that we quote, because we've been quoting these numbers about our potential to ourselves for a very long time, and we need to see that potential and those ideas be put into practice. For example, the 3MTT program by Bosun Tijani, which is supposed to train 3 million technical talents in Nigeria. 3 million is a small number, but it's still a significant number. In the first 2 phases, I believe they were aiming for 300,000, but they're still at 135,000, and election season is coming up. If you give us a big number like 3 million, I think Nigerians are expecting to see a big number come out of that in return. And so I think we do need to move on from the talk shop aspect of things to the actual results aspect when it comes to service delivery to Nigeria's youth and population.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just the key word about it. And you're very correct when you say that, these are important things for the Vice President to say, but it is what we've been hearing forever. Not even from Vice President Kashim Shettima alone, but this is every time anybody goes to Davos, which is an annual ritual of, who is who, as far as global politics and global economy are concerned. This is what we hear. I like the point about the fact that the Nigerian house in Davos, at least you can point at something. But then the important thing that the Vice President said, didn't happen at the Nigerian house. It happened at a Ghanaian event, Ghana Reset, which also had our own former President Olusegun Obasanjo and former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. And therefore, you'll be wondering, what did we have to do at the Nigerian house? What was the core Nigerian content at Davos this year, rather than, hopping here, going there, say a few prepared texts, say the words to journalists, what did we actually do? What did we do this year that is different from what we did last year, where, of course, just like last year and the previous one, it was the same Vice President Kashim Shettima that was there. And therefore, there are questions that we need to ask that let's go beyond the rhetorics. Let's go beyond, the fine words that we keep repeating. 1 out of every 4 black person is a Nigerian. And so we know that. We've known that, forever. We have good plans for the Nigerian youths. Okay, let's see what we are doing so that we can applaud, so that we won't have Nigerian youths, running after, high speed and stuff like that. If you know what I mean. I mean, there's a space for that, but what we are saying is that what we have in terms of a population advantage, let's put it into use. I listened to a gentleman, same Davos, I believe, Chinese, who was speaking about the fact that there are only 2 countries in the world that can talk about the importance of more than 1 billion people in the world. In Africa, there are few countries, maybe we're about the only one, that can talk about more than 200 million in Africa. And therefore, what are we doing with that huge population, particularly when it concerns the digital economy, which you referenced? And I think that those are the things that we expect our leaders, particularly Kashim Shettima, who has been saddled with the responsibility of Davos every year, to give to us. Yes, we do know that we have huge potentials, but then let's see a quality result. That would be my position.
Definitely.
All right, we'll move on. Still at the World Economic Forum 2026, U.S. President Donald Trump seized the moment to launch his Board of Peace, a body for resolving international conflict, with $1 billion price tag for permanent membership. The board was originally conceived to oversee the rebuilding of Gaza, but the draft of the charter does not appear to limit its role to the Palestinian territory. A senior White House official said on Wednesday that about 35 world leaders have so far committed to joining the Board of Peace out of about 50 invitations that were sent. These include Middle East allies such as Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, and Egypt. NATO members Turkey and Hungary, whose nationalist leaders have cultivated good personal ties with Trump, have also agreed to take part, as have Morocco, Pakistan, Indonesia, Kosovo, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Paraguay, and Vietnam. Well, Trump's Board of Peace for Gaza and for the world, I saw, as part of the, stuff that we saw, from Davos, the Board of Peace being finally announced as a legitimate international body that will make interventions in Gaza. But of course, as we have read, it looks like it will not be limited to the redevelopment of Gaza. And I saw the parts about the shoreline, the coastal part, will be reserved for tourism or something like that, seaside tourism. And you're wondering that, does this speak to what Trump and his son-in-law and a few of their friends have been talking about? The Trump Tower, for example, have been, in Gaza, in Greenland, and every other places. So you're wondering that on the one hand, this idea looks remarkable, that you are talking peace and you are talking to practically everybody that you need to speak to, maybe except for Canada. You're talking to the Pope, you're talking to all the key countries, well, at least outside of Africa. But on the other hand, you see the usual telltale signs of Donald Trump that at the heart of it, maybe this is about something that will ultimately benefit him and his friends. But then it's not something that you can say, let's dismiss it. But at the same time, you're wondering that let's hope that there will be those who are being invited on the board of peace would have the muzzle and the wherewithal to at least call him to order if this, does take off. But then these are still early days as far as the board of peace is concerned. But it looks to me like that was a win for America, a win for Trump at Davos.
I, have to completely disagree here. I do not believe it was a win for America at all. I do not believe it was a win for U.S. President Donald Trump. I, in fact, believe that his activities at Davos this past week, were a death knell on American hegemony. It's the death of American hegemony. And we saw that in Mark Carney's speech, the Prime Minister of Canada. But we also see it from the membership of this board of peace. You can paint stripes on a horse, but you won't be able to call it a zebra. Most of his Western allies like France, like Canada, like the UK are not on this board of peace. He said that the people have to pay membership. And you brought up something very important here, this idea of the Gaza Riviera, after thousands of Palestinians have been killed and are still being killed. It's very important that even though we do call it a ceasefire, that we have to admit that every single day, Palestinian children and journalists are being killed by the Israeli military. And while that is going on, that is an acceptable amount of deaths for the international community because it's not at the level that it was before the ceasefire was announced. But every day, we're learning new names of people who are being killed in Gaza. And Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's very famous son-in-law, also presented his real estate plan for Gaza, as you said, with the towers, with the beach front property. And I think this is abhorrent. It is frightening. We read about these things happening in history and we always tell ourselves never again. But what we're being told is that a population of people are being eradicated, are being killed, are being thought of being moved to Somaliland, are being thought of being removed, ethnic cleansing essentially, removed from their homeland, and that rich foreigners will come and build shiny towers on top of the land because it has nice views and it's a seafront property. I think it's absolutely abhorrent and it's scary, and not just this idea of the board of peace and the gold label and the caricature of everything, but also Trump's posturing the whole week when it came to Greenland and threatening tariffs on Europe, when it came to his insults in the words of Keir Starmer about English and British military men. What we are seeing now is a new world order, and people have been talking about it for a very long time, a multipolar world order, and middle powers trying to come to the table. And for me, it's a time for Nigeria to also question itself when it comes to this, because when these middle powers, when we're redesigning this new world order, we have to be on the table, otherwise we'll be the meal. But let's move on to another story where we're coming back home here as an ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives Minority Caucus has alleged that Nigeria's newly passed tax laws were illegally altered after approval, describing the action as a serious threat to legislative authority and democracy. In its interim report, the committee said it found material discrepancies in the laws and 3 different versions of the Nigerian Tax Administration Act of 2025, with a gazetted copy containing unauthorized amendments. Key alleged alterations include lower tax reporting thresholds, a new 20% deposit requirement for appeals, expanded enforcement powers, removal of petroleum profits tax and VAT from federal taxes, and a shift to US dollar-based tax calculations for petroleum operations. The committee also claimed that the National Assembly oversight provisions were deleted from the Nigeria Revenue Service Act. Now, this committee, which was led by Honorable Afam Victor Ogene, said that these anomalies justify a deeper investigation to identify those responsible, restore the integrity of the laws, and protect the independence of Nigeria's legislature. Now, of course, Honorable Ogene was on Arise yesterday evening, and he implied that some of these discrepancies might be as a result of executive rascality, I believe was the word that he used last night. But, you know, when we have been talking about the discrepancies in this tax laws, and this has been a very long process, a lot of the questions have been, what are these discrepancies? Who is responsible for these discrepancies? When did it happen? And that is incredibly important. The House of Representatives itself, and it's very important to note that this is an ad hoc committee of the Minority Caucus. The Minority Caucus has said that it's not their official stance, as the full report has not been laid yet. The House of Representatives itself has also set up a committee which is mostly by the ruling party members, so I'm entirely sure that's why the minority also set up their own to investigate the same claims, and came out and said that they have re-gazetted the laws. But what we are being told is that they are, and I have been able to review some of these laws, multiple versions of the same law. And so the question for Nigerians, for some people, is what went wrong? Who is responsible? And will they be held responsible? But I think there's a bigger issue here. And I think Honorable Ogene, you know, he opened that Pandora's box yesterday on Arise News. What is the state of a republic where the citizens cannot trust the laws, where we do not know if the laws passed by our National Assembly is the same as the law signed to effect by our president, and is it the same as the law that is now being effected using executive powers? Yeah. What is the integrity of the nation and our situation, and what does it mean for laws being passed that have gone through the system before, and also what does it mean for our process now? We are going through a constitutional review process. Are we to understand that the National Assembly, who we have given members we have voted them in to represent us, that they can go and argue and go to committee, they can have public hearings and investigations, and Nigerian public will come in and say, this is what we want, and the National Assembly will go and write a law, and what comes into effect is fundamentally different, not cosmetically different.
I mean, yeah, you know, it's very concerning. And I also watched Honorable Ogene's interview on Arise News yesterday, and I thought that was an important interview, even though it was still about the interim report. You know, the full report hasn't been presented, and he did explain how it works, that yes, you will have 7 days as a committee, you know, to quickly look into the issues that you have been tasked to look into, but then you put in an interim report with the possibility that you might ask for more time to do a better job. It's such a shame that we are back to this position, that we are still discussing the discrepancies, the potential criminality, you know, in these tax laws that have effectively gone into, you know, into operation. I mean, this is the 24th of January. It went into operation after the other one in June of last year. It went fully into operation on the 1st of January. But here we are, we're still discussing the fact about the need to re-gazette, the fact that there are 3 laws in circulation, 3 versions, you know, of it in circulation, and then our legislators are saying that no, we're not comfortable with what is out there because this is not what we passed. These are important things that we cannot ignore, that the executive that has been accused directly, you know, cannot ignore. Yes, the president at the time, before he finally gave his, you know, full, you know, assent, said the errors that if there were errors at all, that they were insignificant. But here we are, back to those who looked at the law, who passed it, you know, returned it to the executive. They're saying that this is not in totality what we passed. I happen to know Honorable Victor, you know, Ogene quite well. He's a refined gentleman and a lawmaker. He's a member of the, you know, apart from being a lawmaker, he's a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. So he knows the weight of the allegations that he has made. And I think that we must examine what he has said together with, you know, as a committee, very carefully, so that when we listen to people like Taiwo Oloyede, who I think that it is not his job to defend, you know, what is in circulation, because he's done, you know, with his own job. We're not even hearing anything from Joseph Tigbe, who is supposed to drive the operations of the law, for example. You know, so if he's done with his own job, there's a limit to how you can defend what is out there. That those who looked at it in totality and said that this is exactly not what we passed. It is important that we get this right. It is important that we even go after those, who allegedly committed these criminal, activities.
And you've brought up a very important point here, because I also think that in our makeup of our political system and how we allow it run, sometimes we forget that appointees are appointees. Absolutely. And we have elected members of our National Assembly for a reason. Our legislature is supposed to be a critical check on executive power. That is why you have even Trump, with all his machinations, when he's in Davos,
he will have to go lobby.
He was even still talking about Ilhan Omar, who he does not very like. He's calling Major Green Taylor to shout on the phone. These are singular members of their own House of Representatives, and so we must ask ourselves. And I do think that the lawmakers, as they come back, to the Green Chamber on Tuesday, must ask themselves that have they given up all their powers that is constitutionally resided in them just to let things go? And because especially when it comes to tax. This affects everybody. Single Nigerian.
Every Nigerian. It also affects their own powers, to oversight. Yes. And they're highlighting it to say that you have removed what the two are. Absolutely.
You can't be judge and jury in your own case, the NRS. And I think this is very important because, last week I saw a picture circulating of one of our tax SARS and the million naira watches that they're wearing. I think it's incredibly important. We're living in a country where a woman lost her child because she could not afford 28,000 naira medical fees.
Absolutely.
We're living in a country where people die because they cannot afford dialysis. Less than, our minimum wage, like we talk about minimum wage, but let's talk about life in this country is incredibly difficult.
You're right. The idea of turning public officers into celebrities of some sorts, and we're looking at the bags that they carry, they're looking at their wristwatches, looking at their shoes and their suits. I think that's not where we should be.
That is not where we should be now as a country.
That's not that. Things are not good enough for us to start celebrating stuff like that for public officers. And I do agree with you that no, if you're a public officer, the idea of going into some, to Doha, to some Caribbean for parties and for birthdays, even when they are not recorded, these are things that I remember when Obasanjo was president. The whole idea of Owambe party when a gentleman had a party in London, and 28 governors out of 36 were in London for that party. The president came out clearly. You say that this is unacceptable. Yes, I'm not your janitor or supervisor, but I can at least show leadership, moral leadership. We need that at this point in Nigeria. Moral leadership from the very top to say that, hey, that's not how we should proceed.
Great.
All right, let's go back to issues of security. The United States Nigeria Joint Working Group has been formally inaugurated, cementing security and intelligence collaboration between the two countries. U.S. Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Alison Hooker, asked the Nigerian government to ensure stronger and sustained actions to protect Christians and other vulnerable communities from religious extremists and other terrorists. This came in the wake of this week's abduction of Christian worshippers in Kaduna State. Arise Chief Correspondent Ferdinand Duroa reports.
At the inauguration are representatives of the United States government, members of Nigeria's executives, security chiefs from Nigeria, and AFRICOM, among other critical partners. It is the third high-level engagement between the Nigerian government and its U.S. counterpart since the administration of Donald Trump designated Nigeria a country of particular concern. Head of the U.S. delegation and Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Alison Hooker, says tremendous strides have been recorded since the partnership was established in November. She's also asking the Nigerian government to do more to protect Christians and their rights to practice their faith freely and safely.
Advancing religious freedom and security will help the United States and Nigeria to enhance the reciprocal benefits of our relationship, solidifying trade and economic deals, degrading terrorist groups that threaten our interests, and strengthening health responses, among many other areas.
Host of the meeting and Nigeria's National Security Advisor says the partnership has improved early warning and rapid response mechanisms.
Our counter-terrorism postures and situational awareness across multiple theaters of operation have seen improvements, particularly in the Northeast, under Operation Hadinkai, as well as in the Northwest and Central Nigeria under Operation Fasang Yamma. These engagements have moved decisively beyond dialogue to action. They have supported improved target identification and operational fidelity, strengthened joint planning, and enable more effective disruption of terrorist networks and transnational criminal elements. These efforts have resulted in the neutralization of several hundreds of terrorists like never before.
The U.S. government, through the working group, will support Nigeria in combating terrorism, especially in vulnerable and high-risk areas, while also increasing U.S. investment opportunities in the country. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Well, meanwhile, Nigeria's police authorities finally admitted this week that worshippers were abducted during coordinated terrorist attacks on churches in northwestern Kaduna State, reversing an earlier denial that had dismissed the reports as false. In a statement issued on Tuesday, police spokesperson Benjamin Hundeyi said the force now accepts that the attack occurred and that several people were taken following further verification by operational units and intelligence sources. The police spokesman did not give any numbers, but said subsequent checks by operational units and intelligence sources had confirmed the abduction. There are certain things that might not be illegal as, defined, but are definitely immoral. And I think the police originally misleading us about the abduction of reportedly 177 people from Kaduna is absolutely immoral. It's one of these, I keep using the word absurdities, but I do not have a word that's better for some of the things that we're facing in Nigeria today. It's absolutely absurd. Do you think 177 people could be taken and would you be able to hide it, particularly in this current environment that we are in? Yeah. We're being told that out of the 177, 11 escaped, including one man who was interviewed by by Nisi Gabriel, the Abuja Kaduna correspondent for Arise News, and he told us how he escaped through the river. Some people were able to escape when they were crossing over the river, some in the bush, but where at least 160 people are missing. The kidnappers have contacted some of their families in terms of seeking ransom, and that this community had paid a ransom previously, just the week before. The community had to pay ransom for other kidnapped people, which is what comes to my point here. Nigeria has created a kidnapping industrial complex. We have commercialized terrorism. We have made terrorism for profit.
Sadly.
And so now we're stuck in a cycle because it is now profitable to be a bandit or a terrorist. Mass kidnappings are a profitable venture for the jobless, the unemployed, or the extremists. Yeah. And we have allowed this proliferation of terror, whether it's political terrorism, those who want to secede, or whether it's Muslim extremists, whether it's those who have those Boko Haram or the ISWAPs or the Lakurawas. But we also now have bandits. Who terrorize communities for profit.
I mean, very well said, Adeswa. I mean, this is the whole point of why there is nowhere else to turn to other than to government and to those that Nigerians think might be able to assist. Of course, sometimes you're not able to totally trust, interventions from American government or any other government from outside. But then what do you do as citizens when you know that your back is, possibly back to the wall? So when we say that we have now commercialized banditry and terrorism, who do we ask tough questions? It is the government. It used to be quoted severally in the past that I'm not sure if indeed he said it, but it's attributed to him, the former General Abacha, about the fact that if an insurgency or any sort of attack against the state lasts beyond 72 hours, that government must be involved. And lately, I've listened to a similar thing, almost word for word, because the the idea of it ought to be universal by the El Salvador president, who had a meeting with Trump the other time. And he says that people have spoken to him about the fact that why is crime on the increase? Why is terrorism on the increase? Are we not able to find in that country a way to persuade them, a way to, talk to them, And he says, no. The reason why this will continue will be because if people who are in it think that they can profit from it. And therefore, it is the duty of government to fight it. To admit that you are not able to defeat them means that you are not supposed to be in government. It therefore means that you have a more powerful force. And the force, the authority of force, rests with the government. And therefore, when we listen to what the police officers say sometimes, without, of course, discountenancing the fact that, they've risen up, with good work in the past. But then when you now deny something that is very obvious, and then when you now come back with your admission, you are not offering any apology, you are not even confirming the number of people that have been kidnapped. You say maybe several people have been taken out. Then we worry. Because this is not how police is supposed to behave in an ideal situation. So when you say that, what was the word you used again?
Absurdity.
Absurdity. I mean, that captures it. Maybe we should even look for a stronger word so that we can get our people to sit down and say, no, Nigerians deserve a lot better.
Yes.
And for the working group with the Nigerian thing, third meeting with the Americans, on the surface, on the look of it, that's not bad at all. But then we should do a lot more than meetings. Sitting in Washington, in Lagos.
I agree, but, just before we leave, because, the Plateau State governor did say that the military was able to avert crisis over Christmas. They were under a lot of threats there, particularly Christian communities. Our security apparatus worked in prevention. It's good if we're preventing attacks. They're fighting a battle on a lot of areas. And also the Kaduna State governor was able to improve their security situation over the last 2 years. So it's unfortunate to see such an attack happen in Kaduna, considering that it seemed like they were on a positive trend there. But, it does show that we're working towards a direction.
Indeed,
and it's not all gloom, but we need them to work better because there's some absurdities. But that's all we have for you on the week that was.